Welcome back to the My Latin Life podcast. Since 2014, My Latin Life has been your trusted guide to traveling and living in Latin America. Our guest today is a Twitter personality named VEO at VRExec. He has around 24,000 followers. He really caught my attention talking about being an expat dad, themes around expat families, being an American abroad, being an American living in Europe. And he gets banger tweets about being an American living in Europe. They do well on the algorithm, I must say. So we welcome VEO to the podcast.
Hey, Vance. Hey, hello to all your listeners. Appreciate the time.
For sure, man. I mean, you've built up quite a following. Hopefully some people will be stoked to hear what you sound like.
Yeah, well, this is my voice. I'm a real guy, not a bot.
Not a bot. So I guess for people unfamiliar, do you want to just tell them a bit about like the inspiration for the Twitter page and what you do there?
Yeah, sure. So I started the Twitter or the X account back in 2021. Mainly was inspired by two friends of mine. One's a hedge fund guy, and the other's a friend from college who was like, hey, you should get into this Twitter sphere, FinTwit world, especially because I had just left my longtime career on Wall Street in corporate America to kind of build something on my own. Solopreneurship, start a business, maybe even search to buy a business, right? There was a lot of crazy ideas flowing through my head around COVID and post-COVID, and I just wanted to go out on my own. And I got hooked up into this build in public, as they say, sort of theme or world where I would talk about just ideas, talk about my decision to leave the corporate world. I would post small business deals. I was doing business brokerage and M&A work locally in my local New Jersey community where I was living. So I think it resonated with a lot of people. Just, hey, look, this guy. Also at that point, I'd won. My oldest son was born, and our youngest was just about to be born. So yeah, I mean, I kind of started out as a self-employed / former corporate Wall Street guy / dad, but I think resonated with a lot of people maybe thinking of making a similar jump. And then we ended up moving to Europe, which changed the whole theme and vibe of what I would post even further. And yeah, it's fun. It's fun to connect with people. Vance, I actually lost your audio, man.
Oh, sorry. I just muted for a sec.
Oh, hey.
No, yeah. I was thinking a lot about what you said. So has your account kind of shifted focus over the past couple of years then?
Yes. Again, I was using it mostly as a marketing engine for myself. I actually met a bunch of clients. I mean, I had sold, I had somebody reach out to me because of something that I said. It must have been insightful or interesting enough to get, some business owners' attention. And I had at least one business owner reach out to me over Twitter DMs asking if I could help him sell his company. So it really was a marketing engine for me in the beginning. And then, it just started to shift. It's funny. I talk about, my wife laughs, like, sometimes she's like, hates the fact that I use it. Other times it's helpful because we'll meet somebody interesting on it and it can be helpful to us in some way. But, I used to always tell my wife, like, I'll be driving, right? We'll be back in the US, we'll be driving somewhere and I'll have a thought pop in my head and I'll tell her to text it to me or email it to me, right? Because she got so annoyed by that. So she knew, like, I have all these ideas and, like anybody, like you keep a mental journal. When you're working full time, like I was on a trading desk for a long time, then on a research desk, you're always talking to people. You're always surrounded by people. You're always scratching that intellectual itch. Post-COVID, post becoming a dad and sort of being on my own or being on our own, you're not surrounded by that anymore. So Twitter is really an outlet for me to just throw stuff out there and engage with people intellectually. So yeah, I mean, in that vein, it's changed. It started out as marketing, like I said, then it just started becoming a way to connect with people that were similar or like-minded. Met a lot of other people in my shoes, my age, in my geography, whether that be Amsterdam, where I live now, or North Jersey. And we've become, close friends over the years, and we still chat. A lot of communities have moved off of X into WhatsApp, for example. So it's really it's evolved, and it probably will continue to evolve, and it should.
So you're from New Jersey, I guess?
I'm from New Jersey, Jersey boy.
So you actually worked on the trading desk, like in Manhattan?
I worked at a boutique fixed income trading desk early in my 20s. And then I went into the consumer world, the data world, and then ended up getting recruited to Wall Street proper, as I would say. Down, I worked for a couple of investment banks in New York, but I was in equity research. So I was the guy, right? I was writing reports with my team on the consumer industry. The guys who put buy, hold, sell recommendations on stocks. That's what I was doing for about 6 years or so. Yeah.
It's funny. I really don't find that too many traditional finance guys have become expats or taken like a, digital nomad expat path. They kind of get the golden handcuffs or something, and they stay in the Northeast.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I post a lot of provocative content on that, partly to inspire people. It's partly how you're wired. It's partly what your life goal is, right? I talk a lot about concepts like prestige and status. I think those are important things to have when you're young and you're coming from nothing, so to speak. You need to bolt yourself on to big brands, which have connotations for quality and prestige and whatnot, right? You want to be affiliated with some of these things when you have nothing. Eventually, though, is my opinion, for most people, you should try to build a little bit of a reputation for yourself as an individual and try to monetize your own skills in a way. I think a lot of people can do that. I think a lot of people are afraid to do that. These are thoughts that can make people very uncomfortable when you start to say to somebody, hey, like, you've worked in XYZ firm, or you've got XYZ specialty in finance for 20 years. Why don't, if you're really that good, you should go and at least for a little while try your hand at doing it independently, because it'll build your confidence too. Especially if you want to go back into that world, you sort of proved it to yourself that you can swim on your own. But it's a controversial view. That's how I've always been wired. So my plan was always to try to become self-employed. My father was self-employed. Maybe it's as simple as that. I am my father's son. Too many variables that go into the decision. But you're right. I don't know a lot of ex-finance people, Wall Street types, especially in New York, who have done what I've done, let alone move abroad. I'm not as driven by, my motivation at this point in my life. I've got 2 young kids. I'm 38, happily married, is to enjoy my day to day. Right. I value my freedom rather than like what my career says.
Yes, and you're bringing this analytical mind to the age-old observation of like the old world versus the new world, and being an expat family. So I like that you're coming to it with like a Wall Street, finance type of background. And sorry, I'm just so distracted. I'm in a parking lot, and this guy's gonna hit my fucking car.
All good,
bro. Are you fucking serious? Jesus, sorry. That's the real deal. I'm recording this podcast in my car in a parking lot using a Starlink. So this is a new here's an expat dad thing for you. I got the Starlink in the car, and I just like put it on the dashboard of the car. Right. And now I have internet like wherever, and it's
amazing.
Huge. Even though the broadband or 5G or whatever is good enough in Europe, some would argue. I don't know. The Starlink's way better.
Yeah, I gotta get one. Get one.
I'm sorry. I'm just having a hard time concentrating. They're trying to park this. They're definitely gonna scrape my car. These idiots. Okay, but dude, I wish we could pull up some of your tweets and almost like Joe Rogan style and like walk through them.
Oh yeah, we can. I mean, yeah, that'd be cool. We can try to think of some. I don't know.
Do you have any that like really you feel kind of put you on the map, or that you distinctly remember? I think every Twitter personality has a few tweets they distinctly remember.
I think it's really a steady state thing, just being consistent and trying to say something, net of value over time. I mean, I've got some funny ones. It seems like the ones that go really viral are the ones that are half provocative, or a little out there, especially anecdotally, right? So I've never posted anything that's not true, right? Like there's some things that I've posted that people say there's no way this happened, or there's no way this guy has friends who've done X or Y. I obviously obfuscate details. I'm not going to dox like friends of mine or people I know, but it seems like anytime you post something online that tells you like that is about somebody doing something or having something that is quote unfair, it just becomes sort of like a banger in various ways. Like, by the way, what are you still avoiding this? Trying to avoid the scratch in your car? Your head's
Dude,
like on
they're
a swivel.
trying to put this big truck right beside. I kind of almost need to like tell them, be like, give up on this parking spot. You're not gonna fit. Um, Sorry, this makes for the worst podcast because you need
No, it's all
you
good.
need the interviewer to be like locked in, right, and listening to every
Yeah, I'm
word.
trying to stay focused. I'm
Uh,
like I'm like worried for you. Your head's like on a swivel. Like I'm,
I
I'm
know.
thinking like there's gonna be like some dump truck is gonna smash into your car here. Um, Maybe I'll just look away and then I won't be distracted.
Okay, we're let's pause. Let's pause. Okay, now we're back. Okay, here's actually a fun one. Driving and parking in Europe is so different than the US in hilariously funny ways.
What's your take?
Well, obviously it's a little bit different in all European countries. For example, I love how in Southern Europe you can like park your car on the sidewalk or put like two wheels on the sidewalk, two
Yeah.
wheels on the street. Shit like that you would just get a fine for, a ticket for
Mm-hmm.
instantly in the US or Northern Europe. And just the way they park is hilarious. Like they do things that like they open my mind, expand my mind.
It's yeah, parking. I feel like up in the Netherlands is a little more strict. It's a high trust society though. So as they say, um, you see a lot of weird parking jobs. I never see anybody giving anyone else a hard time. Whereas in the U.S., you're like in New York or something, yeah, you're gonna get a ticket within 5 minutes of doing something wrong.
Yeah, they don't really ticket in at least in Southern Europe so much. Um, I had a lot of thoughts here. I like remember a lot of your tweets, but I don't have it word for word. But every time you tweet something about this like expat family stuff, live in Europe stuff, like it always kind of hits good. And I'm
Mm.
really looking for this type of like expat dad content that almost nobody does. Like Jake Nomada, he does some with a different angle, like on Latin America. um you're coming to it with a different angle because you're in Europe and you just have like a different background. But there's not too many people I've have you come across others that can talk about this kind of expat dad space?
Yeah, there are. I don't know if I can think of some. I don't know if they want me to say this on a podcast, but there are some guys that I'll sometimes retweet that are other American guys who have started their own companies. That's really so. There's two types of expat dad, right? There's expat dad who is like very corporate. They got sent over to Europe or something to work with an American company or a global company, and the plan was always to return home at some point, like after 3 to 5 years. And and then of course you've got folks that are like me, that's a little bit more flexible. Yeah, we might end up moving home in 3 to 5 years, but we don't have anybody telling us we have to. It's really going to be our decision because of family or whatever else. And those are the folks who are tend because they're in their own business, and everything's marketing now, right? Everything that you write online is some form of branding and marketing. You're more likely to post things. Um, and yeah, there's a handful.
Hmm. So I've seen you do some tweets about like the cost of living in Europe versus the US, kind of how it all shakes out. I remember one of them was like private school versus public school, and you had some thoughts on that, healthcare. was another one. Why don't we tackle that a little bit? Like, have those tweets have done well for you, I imagine.
Yeah, I think that's a big one. Just comparative stuff between living, the U.S. and Europe. I think there are a lot of folks who are not that educated or just haven't done the math on their own. Like but again, it depends on your situation. We were living in New Jersey, very high cost of living place. We like the alternative types of schooling. So like the Montessori type schooling, right? Things that we Americans sometimes think of as charter schools. It's very costly back home. So you can pay $10, $20, $30,000 a year per kid for a school like that. There are places in the world like the Netherlands, for example, where that's part of the education system. So that's a huge savings. It's part of their public system. Mm-hmm. Health insurance, it's something that's not talked about nearly as much. I can admit that if there was a reason I didn't leave Wall Street or corporate and go on my own earlier, like, a couple of years before COVID, is because we were worried about health insurance, right? We were starting to build a family. And the idea of being out on your own, dealing with private health insurance and it costs $2,000 a month was scary, I think. But looking back, it really shouldn't have been as scary, but you don't know. So it's funny, we have such a innovative and dynamic entrepreneurial environment and vibe in the US, yet it's not that easy to go out on your own because you have to worry about the cost. So, now I think we pay something like $350 or maybe up to $400 with dental a month. That's about 10 to 20% what we were paying 4 years ago in the US.
So you're saying that in should I say Amsterdam or the Netherlands? What's most?
Yeah, well, we're in Amsterdam. Yeah, we're in Amsterdam.
So in Amsterdam, for a family of 4, you're paying about $400 a month for health insurance and dental.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So now, again, anything you say, someone's going to comment, or it could be controversial. Like you pay more in taxes for that, right? So we have a little bit of we have a temporary kind of an expat benefit, right? That is very controversial with folks here. It's called the 30% ruling. It allows expats. So there's some distance. Like if you move to the Netherlands from say 300 miles away, I might be butchering the detail, from far away for the purpose of moving here and living here and working here for a Dutch company or like a Dutch subsidiary of a global business. Mm-hmm. They give you a little bit of a tax break for 3-ish years. They've been cutting it back. And the idea is to insulate you. It's like meeting the middle, so to speak, between what you were paying, say, in the US and the full tax bill in the Netherlands. Mm-hmm. And the idea is to make it sort of like compensate you for your moving costs, right? On paper, that's, I think, the point. But still, we pay higher taxes, but than we did in the US, even with that benefit. Probably pay like 8 to 10 points higher, I would say. Mm-hmm. So you pay for the benefit. So I always try to teach people or talk them through, do the net math, right? Mm-hmm. If you're in the US, depending on what your lifestyle is, what are your federal, what are your state, what are your local, what are your FICA, self-employment taxes, all that bundled. And then, what's your schooling situation for your kids? Do you send them to public school, or do you send them to maybe a private school or sort of, again, one of these quote charter schools? Mm-hmm. Do you work for yourself? Do you work for somebody? Does your spouse work for a company? Do you have subsidized health insurance? You have to add it all up. And then, of course, transportation, right? Are you driving 20 minutes to the grocery store? You got to do all that math.
Yeah. So beyond the cost, it's a lot of it's like the peace of mind of knowing you're not going to go bankrupt. In Europe, like they're gonna, I imagine, like for me, it's not like the nickels and dimes. It's actually more not going bankrupt. Not having to be an entrepreneur and worry about the $2,000 a month and like it just making it hard to be an entrepreneur. So those are two huge things. And then I just feel like the healthcare facilities are oftentimes like more civilized. A lot of US healthcare facilities are actually kind of like ghetto or just like weird, like everything's weird.
It depends on where you are. The U.S. is a huge place,
Depends
so
where you are.
there's
Yeah,
going to be
like
yeah.
healthcare in like Florida is like abysmal.
Mm.
You know, but so you have a couple things that I wanted to touch upon. One, well, I want to come back to is the idea of moving back to the U.S. after years in Europe. I think the moving back discussion is a big one. But I can just imagine, VO, like in your day to day, you're in Jersey before. It's like, like urban hellscape, basically, in a way, and or The Sopranos, one of the two,
Well,
and then.
yeah, depending on
But now you're in Amsterdam and you're riding bikes with your kids to school every day or something like that. And I'm sure it's a much more tranquil existence biking to the grocery store.
it is, yeah, yeah. No, it's totally different. Look, I mean, it's hard to compare. We like the Netherlands because one of the reasons we chose the Netherlands is the English language proficiency is I think it's the highest in the world outside of like an Anglo country. We
Mm-hmm.
also have some families, in-laws here, which helps too, who are working here. But yeah, the lifestyle. I have a business. Again, the business I started when I left, the corporate Wall Street world 5-6 years ago. It's still what I do. I consult businesses on data and finance, matters, mainly in the consumer goods space. That's my world, and most of my clients are in the U.S. or Canada. Actually, a lot of them are in California, believe it or not. So the time difference serves me well. That's the other thing, like the whole geo arbitrage concept. So my mornings are pretty chill.
Mm-hmm.
We spend a lot of time with the kids. My wife and I spend time together. Either I or she will ride them a few blocks to school
Mm-hmm.
on the bike. We have a Bachfiets, which is like a cargo bike. It's like a bathtub. It's like a bike with a bathtub in the front. And the kids sit in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like our Dutch SUV. And then, yeah, I mean, part of it's working for yourself. There's nobody really yelling at you or telling you to do anything in particular. You have deliverables. You have things you have to keep. You have to keep a schedule.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll have calls in the like on busy days. My day kind of starts at 3 p.m. my time,
Yeah.
right, which is around the morning, New York. And yeah, it's easy to get used to this.
Mm-hmm. So you do the kind of
We
3 to 10 ish schedule.
yeah
Have you
yeah
ever worked locally for like a European company or worked an in-person job, or has it been 100% remote this whole time?
Yeah, it's a good question. When we moved over, I mean, so I had hired a consultant to help me think about the expat thing, the logistics. I'd never lived abroad. My wife had lived abroad, like in college, but we never really upended our lives and moved. That's how I learned about this sort of 30% ruling tax benefit I mentioned in the Netherlands. And then the advice I got was actually try to get a job. So I did. It's a long story. I mean, the 2 years before we moved, or 2 years on my own, was brutal. I mean, it was a lot of fun. But I definitely needed a breather. I think it's fair to say that. So when this consultant was like, "Hey, like, don't just move your company over to Europe. Like, try to get an actual job somewhere." It also just helps psychologically. It'll help with cash flow, convincing a landlord to rent to you, right? If you're working for a Dutch company versus, "Hey, I'm just some American expat guy who owns his own business." It's a little bit ambiguous, right? Opaque as to like where the money's coming from. It makes a lot of people uncomfortable. So I did get a quote job for a Dutch subsidiary of a big global national for about a year,
Mm-hmm.
which was good because they needed specific help in an area that I was well suited to provide and be of assistance. And then about a year after that, I ended up leaving and going right back to what I was doing. I opened a Dutch subsidiary for my U.S. business and employ myself. And so I had, it's a lot of work. That's the one thing that people don't talk about as much. I try to talk about it. It's a little boring,
Mm-hmm.
but in the U.S. you can create a business like in, I don't know, like a day, a couple hours for
Mm-hmm.
what, $500.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit more complicated here, right? There's notaries involved. There's payroll. Like every entity has to have an employee, right? There's no LLC equivalent here. So there are some things you have to navigate. But yeah, to answer your question, I did have a sort of normal job. I didn't go to an office. I was just the only, I was kind of the only member of this new division that we had spun up for a specific purpose.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I would say, yeah, the entire time I've been living here, I've been working kind of remotely and without anybody around, right? Which gets lonely at times. Another reason why Twitter is a nice outlet.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm in an office now in close to the center of the city, like one of these, like kind of like a WeWork type.
Mm-hmm.
It's just me. I just rent an office space because it has AC, which is helpful on days like today.
This is cool. Yeah, I think being an independent contractor for U.S. companies and stuff like that, working outside the U.S., nobody around you understands what you do or how you
Right.
make money. It's an interesting experience. They just think you like print money from the computer.
Well, that's yeah. I mean, we've been in the same apartment. We've tried to get, we've tried to move to either maybe a smaller apartment or an apartment with a little bit more modern amenities, and it's just really hard because they make you jump through all these hoops. Like, oh, like where do you work? Like, what's your salary? You have to get what is it like? You got to make X times the rent on a gross basis.
Lots of rules up in
Yeah, and
Northern
then by the
Europe.
time you get all this paperwork in order, it's like, oh, it's rented, right? So it's just so hard. And that happens especially in a city like Amsterdam. It's like the housing issue is a major one. Even like owning. I mean, don't get me started. Oh, why don't you guys buy a place? Like again, convincing a Dutch bank that we're stable is hard.
Yeah, that's interesting aspect of Northern Europe. In Southern Europe, they're just like, pay me cash, I don't care, stuff like that.
You can get by like some private. I mean, here from what I've heard, right, from talking to friends, there are some private landlords who will say, "Hey, look, prepay 6 months or whatever," and some folks are in a position to do that. But oftentimes those are older, units. They're not more modern apartment complexes.
Mm-hmm.
When you're the second you're dealing with like a rental management company, it's so robotic.
Uh-huh.
The other thing too, I pay myself a minimum salary, right? Because this is the way we've worked our tax structure out.
Yep.
So, you have a minimum statutory salary on paper. Like, who's going to rent to you?
You get benefits.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't like to open up the book. Like, it's like, oh, sure. I just feel weird sharing too much information. Like, what right do you have to look at all my entire financial life? Right. Can't I just sign something that says I promise to pay you the rent? Like, and if I don't, kick me out.
Yeah.
But that's not how it works.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. So I would definitely want to get into like the feeling and the just what you're noticing in your kids about maybe how they're growing up versus maybe how you grew up in the States. And because they're definitely having a different childhood in a sense, right?
They are, yeah. I think they straddle both worlds, right? We go back to the U.S. when we, twice a year, we go back for the summer. The summers here are shorter, so the summer breaks from school are about 6 weeks, right? Back in the U.S., it's closer to 3 months. The one thing I talk about a lot is there's a perception, right? Again, it's a meme that, oh, you try to send somebody in Europe an email like, oh, out of all, it's like June, and it's like, oh, like I'll talk to you in October. That's maybe there's some truth to that in some cases, but the perception or the joke is that Europeans aren't working very much. The reality is their kids' school is off roughly the same number of days as the American parents' kids are off. It's just in Europe, well, at least in the Netherlands, but I think this is broadly true in other parts of Europe. The number of days you have off is about equal. It's just more sporadic, right? There'll be a random 1-2 week vacation during the year that the American kids don't have, right? So, and that's why, so again, the summer is shorter, but you have all those days sort of redistributed around the year.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, this is a sort of social theory, I guess, that I have been trying to articulate. It's like, I think the fact that you're chopping up the work calendar and your work life more often in Europe than in the US, you don't build as much momentum, like sort of the hustle momentum of getting in the zone for long, weeks and weeks and months, like every day in and day out, for the most part, working on something. It's more interrupted here. And that directly, I mean, you could say that impacts the culture, or it's the existing culture that is why it's that way. But I guess what I'm saying is there's more of a balance where, you're going to be working, you're going to get into a routine, and then you're going to have like a 2 weeks, a 2 or 1 week vacation. And because the continent, I mean, it's small. I mean, it's huge, but it's small in terms of like you can get around much more easily via train or otherwise. I feel like than back home in North America. So yeah, let's just go to Italy, or let's go to Portugal, or let's go somewhere. You can take a train. Well, you can take a train. You can, but you probably want to fly if you're going too far south. But it's very affordable. I think it's very accessible. You're not really driving around much. So yeah, the lifestyle is seeing the world and getting used to traveling, but it's not a huge burden. I feel like it's not.
Mm-hmm.
I for example, I have a brother who lives out in Colorado. Like, let's say you're in New Jersey. All right, you're getting in a car, you're going to Newark Airport. Like, that's a whole ordeal. You're flying to Denver, and then you're getting out. Like, you're getting into a car, you're driving 2 hours into the deep suburbs or the outskirts of the Denver market to visit somebody. It's just a big place. It's not as dense as Europe.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, we're getting used to the idea, and we're probably becoming a little spoiled of just being able to go places. And I just feel like the mental burden is not as high, if that makes any sense. It's clearer how we're going to get from point A to point B. Mm-hmm. And so I think that helps the kids internalize mobility, makes it easier for them to want to and be interested in going other places, right? Because like even the travel can be fun. Like being on a train going somewhere is a lot of fun because you're looking out the window. Mm-hmm. Of course, you're going to go a couple hours and someone's going to speak a totally different language, right? So that wires you a little bit different too. So you're sort of at a young age, you're internalizing, and your schema is developing such that you're seeing firsthand how different other people are, mm-hmm. and how different the cultures are, and you appreciate the idea that like maybe you won't be able to communicate with somebody with the languages that you know. I just think that's something that makes you, maybe it's cultured. I don't know what the word would be, but I think it does give you a little bit of sort of cultural humility. It educates you on the nature of the world faster, right? People are different. Whereas, you grow up in the U.S. I'm not knocking growing up in the U.S. I mean, you could say there's similar aspects in the U.S. too. It's just different.
So you mentioned maybe going back to the U.S. in the future. What is that calculus kind of like? Like, what comes up for you? What would make you want to do that?
Probably, I mean, family mainly. Right? We didn't. Like, people sometimes think, "Oh, did you guys like escape the U.S.? Like, were you running away from something? Like, especially in a politically charged time like we have now." Like, the answer is no. We weren't running from anything. It wasn't like, "Oh, we love the U.S. is our home." Ultimately, we're Americans. We're American family. We were fortunate enough to be able to go and experience something different, while being open to maybe even remaining abroad for a long period of time, right? We left thinking that, hey, we would be back in X years, but also open to the possibility that we would stay there for a much longer period of time, mm-hmm. depending on how things worked out. But our families back home, our parents are getting older, right? So inevitably they're going to need help at some point. They're mostly in the Northeast. So I think, and also there's a part of my wife and I who want our kids to also grow up and experience the coming of age in the U.S. like we did. It's not perfect. We worry about, we'd like them to retain, the language here. I mean, they're fluent in Dutch, which is really cool for being, in the country 3 years, and they go to an all Dutch speaking school. They don't speak English in the school. So I want them to retain that and appreciate that. It's kind of like a superpower, we tell them. Mm-hmm. But we also want them to grow up with, a little bit more of the grit and chaos that comes with the U.S. and the frontierism, as I call it, in the U.S. and just, appreciate that aspect as well of where they came from and what afforded them the opportunities they have. But mainly family.
Yeah, family's a big one. And that looks a little bit different for everybody, but it's definitely hard to live abroad. So your spouse like is American, like she has no connection to the Netherlands.
No, we have. So no, she doesn't. We
I should have asked
have.
this earlier, but you guys don't have any European passports.
I do. I do. I do.
Okay,
Yeah, I have an Irish passport.
I see. Okay, and that kind of paved the way.
It helped. I mean, it was the lowest hanging fruit option. We, I've had an Irish passport since I got out of college. So it's almost 15 years. I got it because I've learned that I could get it. When I was in my early 20s.
Yep.
My father's mother was born in Ireland. So I have a lot of family in Ireland. The obviously the benefits of having an Irish passport nowadays with post Brexit is pretty significant as well. I always thought it's kind of an irony. I thought I would use my EU passport during my corporate, Wall Street experience. Like, hey, like Kevin doesn't need a visa. Maybe we'll send him over to do some corporate project in Europe. That'd be pretty fun. Like pre-kids, never happened. And again, it's ironic that it was actually the freedom that self-employment brought me that created the opportunity. It's just sort of say, hey, like there's nothing really tying us here work-wise. So why don't we take this opportunity to move? And then again, we put the pieces together. So that was what it was.
Because I was almost thinking maybe you did the Netherlands because they have that American Netherlands business treaty visa.
Yeah, the DAFT visa. That's enough. I talk about that a lot. I know a lot of other expat dads.
But you didn't need that because
I didn't
you just signed up as an Irish citizen and like at City Hall, and then did your family through family reunification, basically.
Exactly.
Interesting. Okay.
Exactly. But people, it's funny. It's like, oh, like, well, that's how you did it. I can't do that. I don't have EU citizenship or whatever. Again, I mean, you just said it. There's the DAFT visa. There's also just getting a job. There are a lot of people who just live here who are on corporate visas or employment sponsorship. It's not. I know. We know a handful of families in every single bucket. Right? If you want to do it, if you want to go experience living in Europe or abroad in general, I mean, for the most part, in my view, you can do it. There's a way to do it. You just got to find the way, right? I mean, do the research, find the way. I don't have this. I can't do that. I mean, look, then you don't really want to do it. Do you feel that's fair?
Yeah, if there's a will, there's a way. Do you want to tell people about that Dutch visa real quick, like the 60
I'll butcher it. I don't know. I'm sure the rules change. I mean, the DAFT visa, I think it stands for the Dutch American Friendship Treaty. Again, I didn't use it. I didn't have to use it, but my understanding is you need to create an entity, right? You need to create a business entity here. You have to put yourself on payroll. So you have to have, again, on paper, it should be a real business because you need to have an income, right? So you need to be on a payroll. So if you go, hey, I'm going to start, Vance LLC. All right, we got to pay yourself a minimum payroll. I don't know what that is now, 50 or 60,000 euros, something like that. That money's got to come from somewhere. So if you're a real startup, it's got to be funded from somewhere, yourself or investors or whatever it might be, or revenue from actual client activities that you're performing. And then there's a minimum balance in a bank account that you need to maintain. And there could be some other requirements, but those are the main ones in terms of sort of the funds. Is the payroll minimum, salary you pay to yourself, and the bank account. And then, you get similar benefits. Again, if you do it right, I always recommend hiring like a consultant or somebody or a Dutch lawyer to help you with it. But then you might be able to get that 30% tax treatment as well, benefit for some period of time to help you with the transition moving over. And you get, I think it's 5 years, right? So it's doable. I mean, that's a long time, right? That's a long time to go live abroad somewhere. And you can really enjoy the experience. I mean, look, there's controversies like every country about people moving around. And, the controversy now is people from the UK or other parts of Europe or the US moving to a place like Amsterdam and causing the rents to rise because of demand. I don't know if that's technically true. If that, I mean, rents are going up everywhere. It goes up for me all the time. I pay a lot more rent than I did when I moved because of inflation. So there's always a controversy you're going to have to deal with. but it's doable.
Hmm. Yeah, you know, if you wouldn't mind going down the lane with me one more time, like when you think about raising a family as an expat and just like the pros and cons versus the US, like if you had a buddy, if you're back in the US and you're in Jersey, you're at the bar getting a beer with some old golf buddies or something, and they're like, yo, I want to move to Europe, I want to live in Italy and in paradise, whatever, and you got to give them like the quick pros and cons. How would you lay that out?
Man, I mean, it's a great question. It's loaded. You, the question is the answer is going to be internal. It's going to be, what do you want out of life? How important is your career, right? Are you confident in your ability to earn, right? Or do you need something, right? If you need, that's the whole thing. That's why I preach, a lot about self-employment and the benefits of it. Can people sometimes, where would I work? Like, where would I work, right? I want to go live in Europe, Germany, Italy, Portugal, Spain, Netherlands. Like, what would I do, right? That's a question. Like, you need to back up and start asking different questions, because you can't. Yeah, you can go get a job, but a lot of these people are working really highly paid, intense jobs, and if they want to stick to that lifestyle and that career, then the answer is like they might just not be able to do it, right?
Yeah,
You just
the
can't,
fact
baby.
is, like, it's pretty easy to get a good salary in the US and make 100,
Yeah,
50K, whatever. But not everybody who can make that in person can make that online. Um, I mean, it's definitely possible to make more money online, obviously, because you can scale, and if you're creative and ambitious, you can actually make more when you're not out of the out from under the thumb of an employer. But it's also easy to make less. There's definitely a lot of people that make less remote than they would if they were in person. Because if you just have a pulse in New York City, you can get $250,000 or whatever.
right. No, yeah, no, I agree. So people are stuck on, because it's your training, right? I wrote something not too long ago called the high IQ trap, like this essay on my Substack that tried to articulate this idea, right? So you become such like this sort of this killer mentality. You're trying to climb the corporate ladder and you're getting really good at it, right? You get good at the politics. You start, you're proud of your accomplishments. You're always like polishing your resume. It's always about your image, and that sort of, you become that eventually. Even though in the beginning it might be like, oh, I'm just doing this because I want to get to X financial baseline or X experience, and then I can finally go out on my own or do whatever. But the goalposts move, and then over time, you're 30, 40, you're like, oh, this is my identity. I'm known as this guy. I make this amount of money, and you start to lose the plot a little bit. It's like, so I always say, like, why are you doing the things you're doing? What's the actual day-to-day life that you want to live, and can you do that? Can you affect that in your life for you and your family on paper today?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's waking up in the morning at 9 or at 7 in the morning and not having to rush somewhere by 9? Like does that exist anywhere? Like what would that require, right? Um, and where in the world could you be where that could make sense, and also how are you going to fund your lifestyle? Well, I can make, if I make 300K, maybe I can make 70K because I'm going to move to this place. Like, basically reverse engineering. What do you want your day to look like?
Mm-hmm.
And what needs to happen to get there? Most of the time, that's the low hanging fruit is like, well, I'm not going to be working and living in New York City anymore. I'm not going to be required to make all this money. Because I need to make a certain amount of money to live in this place or live in this house or have this membership to this thing and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to rehash like all the arguments online about the hedonic treadmill and all this stuff. Lifestyle creep, right? But it's real. And so, with us, I'm pretty confident in my ability to go and do, if I wanted to work a job like that, I could. Might have to sacrifice here and there, or might be a rough transition, but you could. So you have to have that confidence in your ability to kind of do what you want when you want, and sort of make the decisions you have to get back there. But also, look, you only live once. We're not getting any younger. we had a vision for what we wanted to do when we were raising kids. I didn't want to be waking up, going into a city day in and day out, Monday, to Friday, working 8 to 10 hours on something. Mm-hmm. So it was like, what do we have to do to have that kind of life? And also have the mobility and freedom to travel. It was going to be hard. Well, I need to go out on my own and start to build a financial baseline, be able to earn myself, build some diverse income streams or diverse areas of expertise that I can monetize forever. And then, doing that in New Jersey was harder just because the cost was so great and the amount I had to work was so insane to keep up with it, I felt. That was part of it, but also we just wanted adventure, right? And so we had this passport, and it's like, hey, we had again an in-law living in the Netherlands, so hey, the Netherlands made sense, and so it was it's a bunch of reasons, right? There was no main this was why. It's just all the stars aligned. But yeah, you have to make sacrifice. I'm not earning anywhere even remotely close to what I was earning in my peak earnings years on Wall Street. Yeah. Right. I don't want to give that impression. I feel like some people might get that impression because I'm posting something about, we're in Italy 1 week, we're in Portugal another week. Our biggest spending is on travel because we're not spending on, we don't have cars. We don't have, health insurance is pretty affordable.
You don't have a car at all.
We don't have a car. I've not owned a car
2 kids,
since
no car in Europe.
Yeah, you don't need it. Well, I mean, the Netherlands. I can't speak for every country, but yeah, you don't need a car here.
Yeah, they're like anti-car.
We'll rent a car when we need the car. There's a kind of like zip cars that you see around.
Yeah.
It's like 80 euro or 100 euro tops for basically you get the car for 6 or 7 hours. You drive out somewhere. It's really affordable,
dude. And in Southern Europe, you can rent a car for $30 a day, type of thing.
Yeah, it's cheap. It's cheap, so it's just accessible, and yeah, I mean that's the bottom line, right? So I know we're jumping around, but you need to take a bird's eye view of your life and say, and I'm all about living in chapters. There's a chapter for this. There's a chapter for that. There's going to be for me. There's a chapter of working 100 hour weeks in a city. And trying to build the expertise and try to save some money and do that whole career thing. Build
I think
reputation. And then there's chapters for other stuff.
Europe is the lifestyle max continent or region. It's not the best for making money, Lord knows, but for lifestyle maxing, just the amount of awesome stuff there is to do in such a condensed area in Europe. And the high level of civilization and, having tap water and this kind of thing, just it's a playground. If you can figure out the money thing and at least make you don't even make that much money, but and I think you've tweeted about this too. Americans don't realize how cheap Europe actually is, how inexpensive a grocery run can be in Europe.
Well, a lot of that's because, the retail, this is a little my expertise now in consumer goods. There's, the retail sector is much more powerful here than it is back in the US. There's a lot less competition. So the manufacturers get beat up a lot. And also the private label penetration is much higher. So the average grocery run, the average European basket is going to have a lot more private label or store brand, which is going to be inherently less expensive than the US, which is all about brands and value add and
the other part of it, though, is in the U.S., you have to pay a lot to not get slop, to get the Whole Foods and get the organic or whatever. Yeah. But in Europe, it's just kind of all organic or, most things if you know what you're doing. And,
well, that's default. There's something 30. There is a list somewhere on the internet. You can Google it. It's 30 ingredients that are outright banned in the EU that are just normal, commonplace back home. So, the value.
So it's cheaper. Maybe Europe's cheaper, blah, blah, blah. Even if it was more expensive, it's literally a better lifestyle. Even if Europe was more expensive than the US, it would be worth it just by how much better the lifestyle is in terms of walkability, organic food, just history, stuff to do, little adventures and day trips and everything. That's how.
Yeah, no, I agree. My whole thing though is I look at it as one big world. I call it the West, just it's like West maxing, right? Can you figure out? We live in the future. There's so many opportunities. People get, it's very easy to be pessimistic and things, but we do live in the future. You can fly from one continent to the other in like 6 hours, and that's just mind-boggling, right? We definitely move the goalposts in terms of like society and being humans, right? It's like there's so many ways to fix your situation or build a business for yourself, right? Make whatever what they call Wi-Fi money or otherwise. I love that term, Wi-Fi money. Everything's Wi-Fi money. I mean, everything. But I would say the best way, in my opinion, right, to spend like your, I'm biased, 30s, 40s, you have young kids, is to have an economic connection to the U.S. because that's the frontier. That's where the experiments are.
Yeah.
That's where people are hustling and bustling the most, right? It's still very much like a developing society. There's just so much opportunity and upside in the U.S. So you have to be bullish on America. You just have to, in my opinion. Can't get down on it. So have a tether there, and then try to live chunks or parts of your life over here because I think it's a little more conducive to like your day-to-day living. Mm-hmm. And so, well, you never. This is new, right? This is new for us, for society, for being human.
Exactly.
The fact that you can. We're not like I think a lot of people just sort of mentally haven't caught up to this realization because you have to make a sacrifice, you might have to get off the sort of default track you've been on. But this is the Western world, and you can even here you can. Oh, you can't make money here. Yeah, maybe European companies aren't paying high salaries, but there's nothing stopping me from working. Going back to like working 60 hours a week, 80 hours a week constantly. Just sitting in Amsterdam instead and making as much money as I would if I was sitting in New Jersey. What's stopping me? On a pre-tax basis, right? Nothing. But it's like, well, you're in Europe, you've got young kids, there's a lot of distractions here. Like, I want to go outside, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to travel. It's so beautiful, and like you said, the culture, it's just, it gives you vibes where it's like, dude, get outside, like, come on, stop staring at your computer. Mm-hmm. So you have to fight that. But there's something inherently or structurally, I think, stopping you. Oh, the culture this, culture that. I mean, like, if you want to make money, you can make money. Like, The internet is the internet. If you have a skill in some technical area, you can help a company with A, B, or C. I mean, it doesn't matter where you physically are. Yeah, there's going to be to some degree some companies that aren't going to want to hire you or work with you because you're not physically there. Maybe, but at the margin. But there's nothing inherently structurally sort of suppressing here sitting on the European continent that prevents you from making money if you want to make money.
Yeah, it's not hard. It's really not hard. Okay, I need to run. I gotta get out of this parking lot. Thanks for working with me. I know it's our first conversation, so thanks for breaking your your Twitter virginity, audio virginity. I need a better word for doing your first podcast with us. Really appreciate it. I want to get you back. I want to do like an expat dad roundtable and go deep on some of these ideas about, just if you raise them in the US, maybe they'll have more ambition. If you raise them in Europe, maybe they'll be more, I don't know.
Yeah,
balanced. So many things that I wish we could.
That's a big one. We can talk about that. We can do another one. Yeah. And I also I love to share more expat guys that are on my mind. I just don't know if they want me to out them or whatever on this podcast, but there are guys like me, like us out there that talk on Twitter.
Send me a few offline. We'll on your mind. And as we get to wrapping up, let people know where they can find you. Twitter account. I believe you also have a publication where you put your writings, a Substack as well.
Yeah. No, thanks. Yeah. So you said at the top, VEO. It stands for Virtual Executive Officer. But VREXEC is the handle. I have a Substack, Junto, JUNTEAU. That's linked on my Twitter as well, where I just talk about this stuff a lot. But if you want to check out my writing and my hot takes on life and working for yourself, that's how you can find me.
That's it. All the links will be in the description. Thanks very much to VEO for joining us, and thank you to the audience for listening. Please subscribe to the podcast. We put out an episode every 5 days with amazing guests like VEO, and you won't want to miss an episode. So please follow on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, X, wherever you're listening to this, all your favorite podcast players. And we'll see you in the next episode of the My Latin Life podcast. Ciao for now.